The moment I slid my resignation letter across the desk, my hands were shaking. Not from fear, but from exhaustion so deep it felt like my bones were tired. I had given that company my mornings, my nights, my weekends, and the quiet parts of my life no one ever sees. I walked out of the office that evening, believing I had finally chosen myself. What I didn't know was that quitting the job would not end the story. It would begin the most unexpected chapter of my life, one that followed me all the way to my front door. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of being seen when you feel invisible, take a second to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that humanity still exists, even in the most unlikely places. For years, my life had followed a predictable rhythm. Wake up before sunrise, rush through crowded streets, sit under white office lights, and return home long after the city had exhaled. I wasn't lazy or ungrateful. I was simply drowning in a role that slowly erased me. Every email felt heavier than the last. Every meeting drained something I couldn't name. I watched my reflection in the office glass grow older, quieter, smaller. The promotions never came, but the expectations kept piling up. I stayed because I believed loyalty would eventually be rewarded. I stayed because walking away felt like failure. Most of all, I stayed because I didn't know who I was without that job. The CEO was a distant figure to most of us. He existed in boardrooms and company-wide emails, not in hallways or lunchrooms. People spoke his name with a mix of respect and fear. To me, he was just another reminder of how small I was in the machine. When I finally quit, it wasn't dramatic. There were no speeches, no slammed doors, just a quiet decision made after one too many sleepless nights and one too many moments of feeling replaceable. The days after quitting felt strangely empty. The silence in my apartment was louder than the office ever was. I questioned myself constantly. Had I given up too soon? Had I overreacted? Bills didn't care about burnout. Fear crept in during the quiet hours, whispering that I had made a terrible mistake. Still, beneath the fear, there was relief. For the first time in years, my mind could breathe. Then came the knock. It was a slow, deliberate knock on my apartment door late one evening. Not urgent, not aggressive, just unexpected. I remember freezing, my heart racing as if the past had come to collect me. When I opened the door, I saw a man standing there who did not belong in that narrow hallway. No security, no assistants, no polished conference room. Just him, holding a look that was serious but human. The CEO of the company I had just left was standing outside my home. My first instinct was embarrassment. The second was confusion. The third was a strange, almost painful vulnerability. This was the man who signed policies, not doorbells. And yet, there he was, looking at me not as an employee number, but as a person who had slipped through his system without being noticed until it was too late. He explained, without formality, that he had read my exit interview. Not skimmed it, read it. The words about burnout, about feeling unseen, about losing faith in myself had stopped him cold. He admitted something few leaders ever do. He said the company had failed me, and in doing so, he felt he had failed too. The power dynamic dissolved in that hallway. What remained was two people standing on opposite sides of a door that had already been closed once. He didn't come to offer my job back. He didn't come with contracts or conditions. He came to understand why someone who once showed so much potential had walked away carrying nothing but fatigue. He spoke about his own journey, not in details, but in weight. The weight of building something that grows so large it starts to forget the individuals holding it up. The weight of realizing success means nothing if it costs people their sense of worth. That night changed something in me, not because of his status, but because of his presence. He listened, truly listened. No interruptions, no defensiveness, just attention. For the first time in years, I felt heard without having to justify my exhaustion. The walls I had built around myself cracked, and emotions I had buried under professionalism spilled into the space between us. In the days that followed, my world shifted again. Not in a fairy tale way, but in a grounded, uncomfortable, honest way. We met again, not as boss and employee, but as two people trying to make sense of a broken system. He asked questions that mattered. About what drained me, about what lit me up, about the version of myself I was before survival became my only skill. I realized something painful and freeing at the same time. I hadn't just been burned out by work. I had been burned out by silence, by years of swallowing discomfort because I didn't believe my voice mattered. Quitting had been an act of desperation, but also of courage. That courage deserved respect, not punishment. He offered me something unexpected. Not a return to the same desk, the same role, the same cycle. He offered me space. Space to redefine my work, my boundaries, my value. He spoke about reshaping leadership from the inside, about creating roles that fit people instead of forcing people to fit roles. It wasn't a promise of perfection. It was a promise of effort. The hardest part wasn't deciding whether to go back. It was deciding whether I trusted myself enough to demand better. Walking away had taught me that survival without fulfillment is just a slower kind of loss. Standing up for myself had already changed me. I couldn't undo that growth, even if I returned. As weeks passed, I noticed changes not just in my situation, but in my perception. I stopped equating worth with exhaustion. I stopped apologizing for needing rest. I started speaking with clarity instead of fear. The company began small shifts too. Anonymous feedback channels became real conversations. Managers were trained to listen, not just to sign. The ripple of one resignation spread further than I ever imagined. What stayed with me most was not the offer or the opportunity, but the realization that leadership at its best shows up where it is least expected, not to control but to connect. That knock on my door wasn't about keeping an employee. It was about acknowledging a human being. There were still difficult days. Healing doesn't happen in straight lines. Doubt returned often, especially when old patterns tried to resurface. But now, I had language for my limits and courage to protect them. I had learned that leaving isn't always giving up. Sometimes it's how you teach the world how to treat you. Near the end of this journey, I stood in that same apartment, looking at the door that once separated my past from my future. I understood something deeply then. You can leave an office, a title, a routine. But the impact you make on people, and the impact they make on you, doesn't end with a resignation letter. Some connections are not bound by walls or contracts. They are bound by moments of honesty. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of your own silent struggles, or gave you hope that being seen is possible, please take a moment to like, share, and engage with this video. Your support helps these stories reach the people who need them most. Before this story ends, I have a special request. Please comment below and share what this story made you feel, or a moment in your life when you chose yourself even though it was hard. Your words might be the encouragement someone else is searching for right now. In the end, I didn't just find a better way to work. I found a better way to exist within my own life. And it all began the night I thought everything was over, when a knock on my door reminded me that leaving a place doesn't mean leaving your value behind.